Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Mike Freeman.
Tyler Gould, man, how are you?
I am fantastic, man.
How can you not be, right? How can you not be after spending the time we just spent?
Yeah, man. We had Doug McMullin join us, and everyone's going to get to listen to him here in a few minutes. And I just, I loved it, man. It was fun. We've known, you've known Doug forever. I've known Doug for a little while, and I've always respected him. I just think he's a great guy, and I haven't seen him for a while. And tonight that respect was cemented through our conversation. So what were some of your takeaways about our conversation with Doug McMullin?
You know, the word evolve comes to mind a little bit. Like you said, we both know Doug. I've worked closely with Doug here in the Reading community, and I see discipleship. I see action. I see faith that has led him to make some changes. That he's, I wouldn't say reprioritized. He's always been all in the gospel of Jesus Christ. But he has shifted some of the things that he spends his time on, and he's become a powerful advocate in our community for our homeless population. And it was really great to be able to have the conversation with him of where that came from, right? And like what were some of those decisions? What were some of those experiences that he had in life that opened his eyes to the needs around him? And, he talked to us about paying attention, talking to us about being a leaf in the stream and not necessarily fighting where God would have us go and what God would have us do. Like it was inspiring to me. It was inspiring to me in my season of life, just thinking, what does discipleship look like and how does faith evolve over time? And I really I felt like tonight was actually sacred.
Yeah, I agree. I loved the conversation. I thought that his discussion about discipleship and the idea of taking action, right, and doing something helps us to become. And I thought that he's such a good example of that, right? He talked about hinge moments, being invited to go as a medical professional to go visit some of these homeless camps and really sort of being transformed in that experience. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but Doug has always been an example of discipleship for me. But it's interesting to hear him talk tonight and kind of see how, like you said, how he's evolved and grown in that discipleship, and what a powerful example tonight.
Yeah, I think after this, we'll walk around and we'll live our lives, hopefully with eyes more open to see. He talked about driving over a bridge that he's driven over for years, right? And then he goes out on that medical assignment and meets somebody who's lived under that bridge for 20 years.
Yeah, these are pretty powerful. Yeah, pretty powerful experiences.
Yeah, and I feel the power there.
Yeah, and I really hope that, that our listeners really kind of soak this one in and really let it marinate, and search for those things that speak to you.
I think that's huge. What we are not saying with this is for everybody to head down to the soup kitchen and donate time, right? You find your mission. Right. You find that thing that is going to help you understand what the Savior did for you. And you're going to find those things that will help you be of service to your fellow man. And again, he also said, it's cool if you want to go work on trails or fix canoes or something, but connect with people.
Yeah, he said when it leads you to people, it's the most powerful, right? And I thought I think I mentioned to you, I took 4 pages of notes as we were talking with Doug tonight. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff in there that I want to implement, and Doug's always been a great example of someone I want to emulate and be more like. And tonight was just a reminder of a lot of those things. So
yeah, I can't say enough kind things. I can't say enough about the man and his wife and the family that is the McMullin family to the Freemans. But the bottom line is for our listeners, as you hear Doug's story, please understand his final lesson, right, is that you change when you act.
Absolutely.
Powerful.
Absolutely. Totally powerful. What a great experience. And I'm grateful to you, Mike Freeman, for bringing Doug McMullin onto the show tonight. It was just a pleasure to spend the time that we got with him tonight. And
yeah, if this show's about being better, we nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, if there's anyone,
Doug nailed it.
Doug nailed it. So, let's take some notes, and hopefully, our listeners are listening tonight, and they find a nugget or two that they can take away and they can do something about. And you and I, Mike, we'll compare notes later about some things that we saw that we want to change as well. But
yeah, right. The richest men in town, the folks that we're talking to, are the yeast in their community.
Yeah, that was a great.
Doug would say, it doesn't do any good to have a pile of yeast over there.
Yeah,
spread it out.
Spread it out. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was fun tonight, Mike. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for your example and for bringing Doug on, man. It was a ton of fun. So, listen, everybody, sit back, relax, enjoy Doug McMullin on The Richest Men in Town.
By the way, our guest tonight, he's on my personal Mount Rushmore. That might come up tonight, right?
Yeah.
That might come up. But I think there is a call to do more than I'm currently doing. And I try to love everyone. I try to interact with people with dignity and respect and treat others as I would want to be treated. And I try to make sure that people understand that I'm trying to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, whether that's spoken word, whether that's action, ideally action all the time, right? But I feel like President Nelson kind of dropped a gauntlet like, hey, guys, this world is ailing and sick, and members of this church need to lead out and let people know that what has been happening for centuries, right, is not okay.
If we as a people, if you want to say church, that's fine. But if we as a people decided to make a shift in how we treat each other, problem solved, right? That's the reality. Like how do you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. That's how the work gets done. I mean, and I think that in my opinion, that's what I see. Like when he says lead out, that's what I hear, is not that I need to climb on the mountain and yell from the rooftops. It means that I need to be me, and I need to be the guy that's out there embracing everybody, right?
Well, yeah, but that goes to your quote, right? The quote that you shared in that same text exchange, Jordan Peterson. You're not everything you could be, and you know it. When I walk around my neighborhood, I know I'm not the neighbor I need to be, because I don't even know these people.
Right. And so now how do you accomplish that task? That's the question.
I think if I love people,
yeah.
What do you do when you love people? You serve them.
Right. So here's the thing.
You're just taking interest in them.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that what some people hear is lead out. You need to know your neighbors. And so the answer then becomes, I will now throw a block party for 500 of my neighbors, and this is how I will get to know them, right? When the answer is just get to know them, man. Right?
Yeah, natural and normal, right?
Natural and
normal ways, organic, like you said.
Right.
But if I love people, I serve them, right? If I love them,
you bring that fruitcake next door and you drop it off. That's what we do.
Hey, it's almost fruitcake season, man.
It is.
I'm itching to have some. I'm itching to hit the eggnog. Doug McMullin, welcome to Richest Man in Town. How are you?
I am fine. How are you guys?
Hey, hot question for you. Are you an eggnog fan?
You're having fun doing this, aren't you?
Is it evident?
All right, I'm sure.
Hey, are you an eggnog fan, Doug?
Oh yeah, sure. Eggnog's great.
Nice. It's good. Well, we're excited to have you. Let me give you a little heads up on what we've been talking about. Here's how this works, right? We've been thinking about our time together tonight, and we've been thinking about some of the reasons why we're excited to have this conversation with you and learn from you and from your life. And we kind of have some thoughts back and forth. Tyler and I, we text each other, and his thought was a quote from Jordan Peterson. And the quote says, "You're not everything you could be, and you know it." Right? And my thought, the thing that was on my mind, was President Nelson's words from conference in the closing, or in Sunday's general conference talk, "Let God Prevail." He says, "Today I call upon our members everywhere to lead out in abandoning attitudes and actions of prejudice. I plead with you to promote respect for all of God's children." And so we've been wrestling with those words, right? That lead out. What does that mean? What does that look like? And so I'm going to throw that out to you, Doug. As you hear those words, what does lead out mean to you?
Lead out?
Yeah.
So I think two areas distinctively, and I've thought a lot about this lately, is I think we stand, I'm assuming that you'll have somewhat of a religious following, or people in the church following, as I'm not sure, but
we've got them all. We've got them all shapes and sizes.
All shapes and sizes. Okay. So
well, not all, like we got like 20 people, Doug. So no worries.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I think we're standing in several, I don't know how many, but years before the millennium. And when Zion comes, it's going to be people from all over the world. And I think that we're going through a time right now where if we're attuned to it, we'll come to understand more than ever before that people of different colors and races, that we're all just one family anyway. And we'll probably be, I think we're getting conditioned to try to get over it, because when that all happens, it's going to be done. It's going to be done. And I just feel some momentum with that, particularly with, amazing Black members joining the church. We had a couple of trips to Africa and had the opportunity to do that and go to church there. And it was absolutely life-changing. I mean, Africa changes you. These people speak of God all day long. We didn't meet one person ever who didn't believe in God and wasn't willing to talk about it. And they're just, in the one town, it's a big city actually, Accra, Ghana. It's probably 4 million people, but there's a temple and there are 12 stakes,
Wow.
And it's like, wow. So I had to teach one day, and Sherry I'm rambling, but that's okay. Sherry got in a car. She got in a taxi with William, whom I trusted, and he took her to go to the temple for the day. And she went to the temple and went in. She was one of like 2 white faces in the whole temple, and just the immense reverence and faith and respect. She said she felt irreverent turning the pages of the scriptures in the celestial room because it was so poignant and stuff. So lead out. Back to your question.
Lead out.
I think in that context, I think we all have an obligation to kind of look ourselves in the mirror as to regards of our biases. I think the term of the day is implicit biases, which is a useful term, and we all have them. and the point isn't to not have them. The point is to address them and to not let them interrupt the spirit and the right spirit. And the second, I think, is to be an advocate in the community and in the world. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to be some kind of an advocate for, equality and true justice and love and standing up for people. And, so I have a really good friend who's a black guy, and he has a very white wife, and they moved to somewhere down in Central California now, but it's super, super nice family. And I posted some things along this line on Facebook and just absolutely got creamed by some people that I know and people that I was in high school with. And he wrote me later and he says, I want you to know my family and I appreciate that post. Because we did some defending of Black Lives Matter and the concept of that and the concept of treating people with equality. And anyway, it's
why are we bashing on each other, right? I had a similar experience. I had a family member say something, and I never engaged with this particular family member, and I engaged, and I made the mistake of engaging. I told my wife, said, you know what, I made a comment, and it was on, and I didn't get into it and get in the back and forth, but man, 2020, it doesn't take much.
Well, there's the safety of sitting in front of your computer firing off comments, right? I think that's the reality. Civil discourse doesn't happen with Mike and Doug and I sitting face to face having a conversation about the things that we believe and maybe disagree on. When we can sit in front of a computer screen, read a soundbite, if you will, from Mike Freeman, and then lob some grenades at him for what he posted. I mean, it just doesn't allow us to really try to really understand where we're coming from and why, there's no context or nuance to those kind of comments. So,
right. It's a little like road rage. You feel like you're isolated and you can say whatever you want.
Right. Yeah.
And it can escalate. And, the whole concept of, contention is not of me,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really, I think it's big.
Yeah.
So,
anyway. Well, Doug, speaking of advocacy and helping and seeing people for who they are, you've been really involved in the community up in Redding with the homeless community and helping that. Can you tell us a little bit about what the work that you're doing with those that may be suffering and don't have homes?
Yeah. That was an opportunity I had over the last probably 5 years to be a part of the clinic where I work has an outreach that we go out and you basically take a backpack with medical stuff in it and a couple of nurses, and you go out into the homeless camps. And you always got to take sandwiches. That's what opens the door. That opens the door, right?
Yeah.
And water. And you go in and everybody's kind of suspicious of you, like, what are you doing here? Because they're used to law enforcement coming and pushing them around. And, whether for right or wrong, that's a whole nother discussion for a day. But they're used to that. You really got to break that down and they realize why you're there. I kind of fell into it and was invited to it. And before I knew it, I realized that I was talking to people about their lives, why they were out there. For 3 months, I asked every homeless person I met, I said, do you want to be out here? Or if we had a place for you to go, would you go? And every single person said, I would absolutely get out of here. This is horrible. It's dangerous. I don't want to be here. If I had a way to do it, I would do it. And it opened my eyes to, why most of the people are there, who they are, why they're there, and that, and I'm going to jump out a little bit. Sorry, we're getting going on this. If you live in an upper middle class white bubble and you don't have contacts with people who are really scraping by or are marginalized groups or it's easy to stereotype. It's easy to, and I did. I lived most of my life driving over the Cypress Bridge thinking, okay, that's great, I'm on my way. And then I met Barbara, who was 72 years old, who lived under the Cypress Bridge and had been there for 20 years. And that's profound if you think about it. Going camping for a couple nights is horrible.
Thank you, Doug. Yes.
I mean, it's, you're on the ground, you're on the rocks.
Spoken like a true scoutmaster.
This lady, you don't sleep, right?
Right.
This lady's telling me that she's been under there for 20 years, whether that's exactly right or not. But
sure.
But she was really sick that day, and she had the flu, and her friends were all saying, you got to get her out of here. She's too old for this. She was in her early 70s, and she was a little turned around mentally because she was sick. So we put her in a motel, and with donations, we financed her to stay off the street, and she got some money every month. So we got her involved, so she would pay most of it, and we would help supplement it, so she'd have food money. She stayed in the motel for a year and a half. She said she got in the shower and stayed in there for 2 hours first time.
Wow.
She took her dog, and they were in the Capri for a year and a half. And I would talk to her, and I'd say, she'd say, I've learned some stuff. She says, I learned that I need to pay my rent every month, and then it will work. And that's kind of, she said it. And I asked her one day, I said, so Barbara, does your right hip or your left hip hurt? And she goes, oh, honey, I don't know what those are. She said, it's this one. And she pointed. And it hit me that, what's my responsibility as a disciple of Jesus Christ? What would he do? How did he go about doing good? Who did he go to? What were lepers in his day, and what are lepers in our day? And I know that when I'm doing that and I'm talking to somebody and just giving them some hope and helping them out, the Spirit is very, very, very strong. And it was just a life-changing experience for me. I did not think I would go there. I did not anticipate that in my life, but to see that, and I'm not sure why it has or why it's there, if it's preparation for something else or just to do this. But it truly is life-changing. And I worry a little bit that in our churches, we stay in kind of a pile. We're supposed to be yeast, right? But we're staying in a little pile in the corner of the loaf. And really, really, we should be, connecting with a lot of other people in our community. It's been really fun to get to know the director of the rescue mission, Jonathan. Jonathan Anderson is just an amazing guy, and people that work there are doing an amazing work. And there's lots of, he'd be a good one for you to bring on your program.
We'll hunt him down.
I was just writing his name down. He was right there.
But that's been a real eye opener. I looked at your questions beforehand, and that clearly is a pivot point for me in the last several years. It's changed my political views. It's changed my whole thoughts about everything, about who's joining the church in the world, and do they have to buy into the politics of Western United States? What's their life like? What are their stumbling blocks going to be? Are we going to be their stumbling blocks because of our culture? There's really, really amazing missionary work going on, and it's just, Africa was amazing. It was just amazing. So innocent and just faithful and true, and have nothing but pay tithing, and it was cool. It was amazing.
I don't even know. I don't need. There's so much there, right? There's so much there. I'm curious to know a little bit more about that chapter, and we'll come back to that. But can we?
Your show, Mike.
No, you are the hero of this story, Doug McMullin. There's so many reasons why I personally admire you, and respect you and love you. One of the questions is, who's on your personal Mount Rushmore? I confided to Tyler before you came on the show that, Doug, you are on that for me. I'm grateful for your example, and I'm grateful for the things that I hear as I hear you, right? And as I watch you live your life. And so part of the purpose of this show is to find out how a life like yours comes to be, right? We talk about hinge moments and we talk about some of those things, but can we go back to even just growing up and parental influence, right? What was it like growing up? Where did you grow up? And can you talk a little bit about your mom and dad?
Okay. That's nice of you to make the Mount Rushmore comments. That's okay.
100% true, Doug.
That's a scary thought, though, to be on someone's mountain. So caution of that.
Oh yeah. Hey, it may be a mountain. It's not a pedestal. It's not a pedestal.
That's right.
You're okay.
That's right. So I grew up in Ogden, Utah. My dad was raised as a member of the church. He went in the Navy and had a kind of a crazy experience in World War II that was big for him. My mom had married before and was a widow. Her first husband died in a ship getting blown up in World War II. She was from a very nice family. It was that her parents had immigrated from Wales, and so they were pretty old school European. And when her husband died, she was supposed to come home and take care of them, but she didn't. Instead, she married my dad, and they met and moved off to Utah. And they went with her because they thought she was going to become one of his 28 wives or something. So my grandpa and grandma spent one winter in Utah, and that was it. They were out of there, but it was all fine, and they realized that. And so my parents actually upped the game for their family. Our family was much more active, I think, in the church and engaged than theirs were. So they lifted it up for all of us, for the three of us, my two brothers and I. So we were just a nice, I'd say, middle-class family. My dad sold life insurance. I had two brothers.
Can I stop you? Can I stop you, Doug, and ask about? You mentioned your dad had an experience in World War II.
Well, it took him out of small-town Utah, and it put him in the world. And wars are scary, and they really change you. So he was on a ship in the Pacific for 4 years. So more than just one experience, it was just the whole thing of, right, being out there and living his life, being an example, being known that you're a member of the church and what that's like. You're supposed to be a good guy, and people in wars do crazy stuff, and there's a lot of that on every side. But I think it changed him. I think it refined him a lot. It really it was hard. It's pretty serious stuff.
Did he talk at all about those things at all, or ever share those, or did he keep it in?
He shared actually a lot. He was never really in a face-to-face traumatic battle thing. I mean, their ship would go into battle stations, and they would. It's scary, and they were going in to bomb some island, and he put a story in our home newspaper once about they were going to bomb, I don't know, it was Okinawa before the invasion or something like that, and the ship's loudspeaker started playing the Tabernacle Choir, and they were singing "All Is Well," right? and so like the captain came to him and said, they know what they're talking about.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
that's comforting.
Yeah.
But so anyway, but I think I remember one time he said there was after an island invasion, there was a guy aboard ship who would take anybody who wanted to go, and they would take pliers, and they would go pull out all the gold teeth from dead people. And they would put them in a can, and they would collect them. And he thought that was a little grisly, so he didn't he didn't really want to go do that. And so he didn't, but other people did, and they collected them, and anyway.
Wow.
Kind of weird.
Wow.
So, but anyway, I was the youngest kid in our family by about 6 years. So my brothers were older than I was. Just a nice life. Went to Ogden High School, played in the band. Tried on debate a little bit, and then.
Did you know? Did you know you wanted to be a doctor at that time?
Not really. When I was a junior, there was a physiology class, and we had this amazing teacher, Mr. Godfrey, and he had the best class, and we did cool stuff. We watched movies of heart surgery and babies being born, and we did blood types on each other, and we operated on pigs, and I mean, it was really cool, and that's what really made me think I really, really like this. This is really fun. As time went on, I knew I either wanted to be a doctor or a math teacher because they were pretty similar. They were pretty similar to me.
Yeah.
And that is, you got a subject matter that you share constantly, and you're always working with people all day, and you basically teach them all day long about what's going on so that they understand and know. And so to me, education and medicine were pretty similar. That was my backup. So, but
it's a pretty noble backup.
Right. But yeah, big things in my life early on was absolutely seminary. Going to seminary was an anchor, and the other was scouting. Scouting, as it was done, was really a fantastic experience, and I hope our kids can still get out and do hard things and have great experiences, because that's where really roots for it took off for me, I know. So, and it's
a great program.
It's the gospel in scouting. I mean,
I agree.
more than just going and saluting things, it's having experiences out there that lift you.
I agree. We just had an Eagle Court of Honor at our house a few weeks ago. So, yep, my son just got his Eagle Scout. So, Doug, you talk about seminary? Can you talk about that for a second? It being an anchor, how did that impact you, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think seminary is what gets you. It got me to start reading the Bible, the scriptures, regular way, and kind of having those experiences in regular with the scriptures. I think it just builds your testimony.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to have that. For a lot of people, it's their mission where they spend every day studying the gospel or something where the bricks get put down. And seminary was a 4-year seminary. Utah was a little easier. It's release time. But the last year was early morning. But those were big key things. And I remember my dad told me, he said he wished he'd had seminary like that when he was a kid.
Very cool. Yeah.
So we talk all the time about faith being an active source of strength in people's life, right? And I think that there's a place where every hopefully young person, but every person has to come to terms with whether this thing called the gospel is real, right? We live on borrowed light, maybe. We live to match up with other people's expectations of what we're supposed to be doing. Can you look back on your life and point to maybe a time or a season where faith became that source of strength for you, where it became real?
That's a great question.
And we've had some great answers. We've had people that openly and candidly say that, they went on their mission because it was the thing that they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And out there on their mission, in that study, immersing themselves, they found it to be true, and they dedicated the rest of their life. But
right.
And we talk all the time, Tyler, about church being kind of a dress up thing where people go and they put on their church clothes and walk around and act like everything's fine, when really life is life, and we're there to get better, right?
Right.
The world beats us up, and we go to church on Sunday so that we can feel of one another's strength and fellowship and renew our covenants and promises. But where was it more than just going to church for young Doug McMullin?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I was a really good kid. To me, it was, my brother was really did a lot. He did everything. He was right in front of me all the time, messing up. So
you got a great non-example.
And I hated the contention. I hated the arguments. I hated what it brought into our house. He's doing great now, but that really pushed me to, if I knew he listened to KCPX, I would listen to Club 57. I would do anything, and not necessarily for the right spiritual reasons. I think more out of just I'm going to do this. So I was pretty straight arrow. I did go on a mission, I think probably for the right reasons. I had glimpses of really spiritual things early on in my life. And I think if people pay attention, the Lord reaches out to you. God reaches out to you. And if you have eyes to see, there are times when he's telling you he's there. And you can call this a weird one, but when I was about 14, I was on a Little League baseball team. And I really had a crush on this girl named Cindy. And she's watching the game. And I'm up to bat and I'm thinking, okay, I need to get a good hit here and impress her. And it didn't happen. I think I struck out or something like that. So I went off to the side. Later, I was standing there and I distinctly remember saying a prayer. It was, Heavenly Father, help me to get a good hit the next time I get up. Because I was waiting, because I wanted to impress her.
Yeah. Well,
the innings went by and I didn't get up. I didn't get up in that game anymore. And I forgot totally about it. The next week we had another game. This left-hand pitcher, southpaw guy, scared everybody. And I was like second up or something like that. It was a little weird because he's pitching left hand. First pitch, first swing, over the trees. I have never, ever hit a ball like that. And it was the easiest thing ever. And it just went boom, gone. And I was astounded. I was like, yeah, that's pretty exciting. And then a couple of weeks later, I set this all up. And some people would say, well, that's just a nice coincidence. But I feel like in his own way and his time, God wanted me to know that he's there in a way that was acceptable and wouldn't flatter my pride. It wouldn't come, and I that was a cool little experience to me, and I reflected on that a lot. It was kind of interesting, but the mission was absolutely the hardest thing I've ever done.
Where did you serve, Doug?
No holds barred, in Germany.
Okay.
And I'm an obsessive detail guy, and that's my natural man. And the whole lesson of my mission was lay off the obsessiveness, lay off the cultural exactness, and let the Spirit be your guide.
Yeah.
And it was drawn to me in the next many years and through that experience that I can try really hard to be a good guy, but if I don't do it in the Lord's way, if I don't yield to the Spirit, because sometimes it calls you off, right?
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't deviate to the right or the left. And so that was a tough experience. I had companions that were, one guy for 5 months that was probably Asperger's syndrome, and it was hard, but you get what you need there, and I got what I needed. I got to do something hard that ever since, if something comes up that's hard, I go, this is nowhere near being with Elder Wall.
I can do anything, right? I can do anything.
If he hears this broadcast in Scotland, he might feel bad. I don't know, but that's what that was for me. And then best thing in the world, come home, get married to my wife, and live life. And she was a very calming, humorous influence that was awesome. So,
how did you meet her?
I went to BYU for a semester or two, and I tried to date so many girls. I really tried, and they wouldn't go out. They all said they were waiting for someone, and it was literally just a blank. It was a dead end. It was crazy. So my parents had moved from Ogden to Layton. It was a little town outside Ogden. And when I came home from my mission, we had a young adult group of like 8 of us. And she was in that group, and we met. And that was a pivot moment that when we met. That was fun. My dad looked at me and said, "Are you going to let her walk home alone?" I went, "No."
That's awesome.
Hey, you mentioned how difficult the mission was, and applying that to hard times in life. How does Doug McMullin deal when it is hard?
Yeah.
How do you deal?
Yeah, that's a good point. Some things are hard. There's different kinds of hard, right? I think everybody has their natural man, and you tend to want to go without the Spirit. You go to your natural man when things get tough. That maybe you get angry, that maybe you get quiet, that maybe you get selfish or prideful. But I know, and it's distinctly made clear to me, if I daily, and they talk about it, but it's so true for me, is that if I daily partake of the scriptures in the Spirit, and you can tell when it comes, it takes me about 20 minutes. It doesn't come in 10 minutes. It takes a while. But then all of a sudden there's this perspective that comes that gives you, the hard things aren't hard anymore. And the things that you were wrestling with really pale in comparison to everything else. And that's an extremely elevating experience that I think I'm supposed to learn in this life, because it happens again and again,
Yeah.
But
you talked, Doug, when we were talking about your experience with serving the homeless, and you talked about changing what discipleship looks like. What does that evolution of discipleship look like for you? I think when we start on the path of trying to embrace the gospel and make it a part of who we are, I think for me, my vision of what that was 20 years ago is totally different than what it is today. Just with the experiences that you go through. What does discipleship look like for you, and how has that evolved over time?
Yeah, I think initially, if I described it to myself intellectually 40 years ago, it was, you do what you need to do. You pay your tithing, go to church, you're prayerful, you do you read the scriptures. I think you do feel the Spirit. I think you're blessed, I think you're guided, you're led, and it's great. There will come a time, I think, for everybody where, if you want to say it that way, when the Savior looks at you and says, "Go sell all that you have and give to the poor." And that's a very sacrificing challenge, and it could look different ways for different people, right? But it's to sacrifice what you other things to bless other people. And it's the scriptures are replete. I mean, how many times does the Savior or do the prophets say, "Remember the poor and the needy and the sick and the afflicted in all things"? And if we don't do that, we're kind of fooling ourselves. The Spirit and its influence will be limited with us. We'll be great terrestrial kingdom candidates. But
you think of the Beatitudes, right? And you think of some of the lessons there. Blessed are the meek.
Yeah.
Right.
But go ahead, Doug. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think for me, like I remember Elder Maxwell. I mean, he was a very spiritual guy. He talked about, along with whatever your calling is in your life, is you have to find your mission. You have to find your mission, your personal, between you and the Savior, way that you bless. And for him, I think it was after his cancer, after his leukemia, he developed a personal mission to go to cancer wards, and he would go and visit people that were going through chemotherapy and stuff. And that kind of that's kind of a Thomas S. Monson mission thing to me.
Right.
And that kind of reaching out that President Monson did was truly amazing. And I think that emulates what I want to be in a disciple. When he said, I'm here for the Lord to ask me to do something. That's when we're really thinking that I'm ready to act on uncomfortable promptings, then we're starting.
And when that becomes the quest, right? When that becomes the quest, and it's not a nuisance, but it's like, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to let God prevail in my life. I'm going to let him be the greatest influence on my life. And that I love that, find your mission, right? Because that means different things, right? Tyler, that might mean something different for Tyler than it does for Mike, than it does for Doug. Right. But the idea is it's still in that line of discipleship.
But I think too that idea of doing, of doing, I think that the act of doing helps us to become, right? I think that those are connected. And there's so many times that we talk about, like Mike and I were talking about the quote from President Nelson, and so many times we have in society when we're talking about how do we make changes, how do we affect change, and we want to create committees, and we want to create these panels, and we want to bring in the brightest and the best and have discussions about how we can affect change. And I think when this discussion that we're having right here about discipleship, to me, this is what change is, right? Going out with a backpack with medicine and some sandwiches and going visiting the homeless and saying, hey, what can I do to help you? It makes a bigger difference, in my opinion, than all the committees that we could have to discuss that issue if we were all engaged on that level, right? And I think that's tough. We're all evolving at our own rate towards that, I hope.
But you're right. Action, and I don't know how you all are, but I tend to want to sit and plan, and get it all figured out and everything like that. But you're right. You change when you act. And my wife of late, she's not working right now. She said she prayed that she could know how to serve more. Within like 2 weeks, she's got like 3 widows she's visiting.
Wow.
And it's really, I really admire that. That's a dedicated plan and effort, which is very cool.
Absolutely.
And is really a blessing. Whether you visit somebody who's got cancer or somebody who's homeless or somebody who wants to get their life together, who's a drug addict, in every step, it's legitimate to say, this could be me.
Absolutely.
I could have cancer.
Yeah.
I could the cards dealt a little different. I'd have all those childhood traumas and couldn't put stuff together. I could be in the forest. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I could be on heroin. That could all happen to anybody. And we kind of live in a little pride place where there's us and them. And I don't think that's really pleasing to the Lord if we do that.
Can we then talk about that? Because that pride place kind of is equivalent to that bubble, right?
Right.
What advice do you have for folks to get out of that bubble, to get out of that pride place?
You do what Bishop Gould just said. You got to go do something.
You got to do something.
And that might be that mission. That might be your ministering visit. It might be following a prompting to go to the hospital, following a prompting to go see somebody or call somebody. I knew, I remember President Jensen, Rick, he had to travel a lot. He wasn't sure how he could be visiting people. So whenever he would drive to the airport, he would call a person. He would just think, who should I call? And he'd call somebody on his way to the airport, and he would just see, how's it going? Check in with him and stuff. And that was a pretty cool way to act. But I think, it's James, whatever it is, first chapter there, pure religion, undefiled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is to visit and keep yourself unspotted. So you gotta stay away from bad stuff. You gotta stay with good things, but that's not enough. He wants us to do what he did. he worked hard. He organized his church. He did all that he was commanded, but he went about doing good. And
and it's not about the gospel of Jesus Christ isn't just half of what is in James, right? It's not just about don't do bad things.
Right.
It's not just about keeping yourself unspotted. I think the wisdom in that verse is that you cannot think of others if you're not well. Right? It's going to be very difficult for you to be others-minded or others-centered if your stuff isn't taken care of.
And that's the MTC experience, I think, is that if you start to do good things and you start to serve and you start to be a blessing, your vision of where you need to clear things up becomes crystal clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can listen to somebody telling you to go clear everything up a million times. I've seen that a few times where it just didn't work. But when real service came and the Spirit came, then that person knows, and it's much easier for them to act on that.
Elder Renlund just said that. I think Elder Renlund just shared a video, and his point was, as I get closer, I'm filled with more desire to be like Jesus Christ.
Right.
And all of those things that I need to work on come clear into focus, right? Because they're clearly impediments. They're obstacles to that.
Right. So if we go with the non-church quote, we go back to Jordan Peterson that right, which was, you're not everything you could be, and you know it, right? I think the closer the more work we put in, the more I realize the more work I need to put in, because there's that the more effort I put out, the more clear that call comes to be better and to stretch and do more.
Yeah.
Well, you guys remember James E. Faust, right? And he's getting broken up and emotional as an older man getting ready to meet his maker, and he's thinking
his grandma's woodpile.
Thinking about his grandma's woodpile.
That was a heartbreaker. That was a heartbreaker.
Yeah, but that's how refined it was, right?
Yeah.
That he felt a disturbance in the force, so to speak, because he mistreated his grandma by not getting the wood for her.
I love that idea though of the find your mission. I hadn't heard that, and I was just makes me think when you mentioned that it was Elder Maxwell that said that. Is that right?
Yeah.
Elder Maxwell kind of made it his mission to visit some of these cancer patients and be involved in that side. And you mentioned President Monson, going and visiting the widows and making that sort of his mission. And as we're sitting here talking, it's that idea of find your mission is really finding what your action is that you're going to take, right? To maybe solidify or to start on a path to discipleship
and explore it, and to do it with the right reason. And there's a number of ways to do this. One is there's widows in every ward.
Yeah.
Call one up and say, how's it going? How are you doing? Wow. To go to I told my brother, he lives in Idaho, I said, just go to the homeless shelter. There's one in Idaho Falls. Go help serve food, and then sit down by some guy and ask him what's going on, and hear about his life. He'll tell you. And generally you can be amazed that, wow, if that were my path, I would probably be having challenges too.
Yeah.
Could we take a moment? Brother, do you have your scriptures handy? Or do you have a phone or something we can grab? We're making history here, Doug. We've never actually done this.
Okay.
But I would like to read some verses if we can. I think they're appropriate. Let's go to.
You know where you want to go? Okay.
Yeah, let's go to Matthew 25.
Yep, that's the first one. Luke 10's the next one, and then Mosiah chapter 4.
Okay. Well, we don't have a ton of time to dedicate to this little gospel study, but let's go to Matthew 25, and this is going to be a long haul, but I'd like to read verses 31 through 45.
Who's going to read?
As our guest, can we make you read?
Yeah. Yeah. And when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, and then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. And then shall the king come unto them and on his right hand, say unto them on his right hand, Come ye, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared from you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. And then shall the righteous answer, saying unto him, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, and when fed thee, and thirsty, and gave thee drink? And when saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
Tyler, you want to take 41 to 45?
Sure. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked, and ye clothed me not. Sick, and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me.
Whew. You know, I don't know what's moving in you as we read that. I'm thinking of Salvation Army. A while back, they had a campaign that said almost give is the same as not giving. Right? And how many of us are so busy and we almost gave? We almost called that sister. We almost reached out to that brother, but we're busy.
You know, it's funny. I had this thought the other day. I was driving to an appointment, and I got off the freeway, and there was someone in the median there looking for some change, needing some help. And, my first thought was, I kind of see him walking my way on the median. I'm thinking, oh man, I don't really want to have this conversation. It sounds terrible, right? And then I thought,
it's honest
for a second. Then I had this thought, like, I saw him come to the window, and the thought came to me, like, what did he envision his life to be when he was 10 years old? Like, honestly, that was a thought I had. And then I thought, what did his parents want for him when he was 10 years old? And it completely changed my thinking at that point, right? I mean, we had a brief conversation, and, give a few nickels, right? But I think that if we made an attempt to see people for who they really are and what their real value is as eternal and with eternal potential, I think it changes those conversations. It does for me. I have to remind myself of that. I even think about President Nelson's comments about race, right, and prejudice. I mean, I told Mike, it's sort of sad that we have, in the year 2020, we have to have an announcement in the church that we bring this up. I mean, it is what it is. But if we saw people for who they really are, then I think it changes how we deal with them. And for crying out loud, I want people to look at me and give me the benefit of the doubt, right? I mean, I hope that's the case. And if I'm wanting that from someone, I certainly better be willing to do that to everyone that I'm coming in contact with.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. I mean, your natural man comes up on all those. And I ask myself, why would I not give this guy something?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's usually because I don't want to be a sucker. I don't want to be taken advantage of. I can hear other people saying, oh, don't do it. And, maybe it's not the right thing to, at that moment. But there are other ways that you can.
Yeah.
And I think there's never anything wrong with food.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go out on a date, buy 3 hamburgers, one for me, one for my wife, and one for the guy on the way home.
That's
Go
right.
find. I mean,
it's Dave Specht and Stephen Mitchell we're talking about here, right? Some of our previous guests that talked about this.
Previous
that
guests
same
did
principle.
these same things. Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's replete. One of my favorite. If you want to go back, it's sometimes a little painful, but go back and listen to and read President Romney's talks.
Really?
On welfare.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all there, and it's profound. That the giver and the receiver will be sanctified.
Yeah.
And so the scriptures that you made reference to, we're not going to necessarily have time to get into them, but Luke 10 would be parable of the Good Samaritan, right? Go thou and do likewise. Clear instruction, right?
Clear.
Who is my neighbor, right? Powerful parable. And then the other one in the Book of Mormon with Mosiah, are we not all beggars?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we should ask ourselves questions like the ones that came to Tyler's mind. And we should see ourselves.
Yeah.
We should see ourselves in the humanity of it.
Right.
Right? Because we can tell ourselves, or whatever, we dehumanize things. Because maybe it helps us with our own
it's
not giving or almost giving.
Yeah.
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 But there's a if one decides to do this and you do it quietly, and it's hard to kind of broadcast it and talk about it. Like, we had a lot of publicity for this, but it's tempting to just be adored or whatever. But that's not the way he would do it. And
don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. Right.
To go into act in a meaningful way, whatever that is. It might be calling your sister you haven't talked to for a while. It might be, there's just those things of Christ-like service that he wants us to do. And I do think he would like us as members to get out of the yeast pile.
I love that. Yeah. I love that.
To be a little more leaven in our community, to rub shoulders with the Methodist priest or minister that needs a new flagpole, if the church catches on fire, we go and help them. That's where we need to be.
I agree. I think now. So let me ask you this, Doug. At what point, Mike asked the question, at what point does faith become powerful for you? At what point does discipleship become something real for you as well, where you feel this call for taking this action and doing this? I know you mentioned I was invited on this one time, sort of this hinge moment, and now this has become this passion for me. But obviously, I've known you before you were involved in this to the degree you are now, and in my estimation, Doug McMullin is a model of discipleship. And so, at what point does that become something for you that is powerful to take action and be a disciple?
Yeah. I think anytime you sincerely try whatever it is that you need to do, if it's the staying unspotted, if it's the visiting the orphan and the widow, if it's rededicating yourself to trying to be in touch with the Savior, with Heavenly Father, the Spirit. Whenever we act on those things, he comes a little step nearer to us. And I think incrementally you get those coins flipped into your bucket, over time, and they really add up. And I don't think it was a big turn switch for me, but service in the church, I had a great time on the High Council Teaching Seminary. It was like another mission. It was really, really an important time for me. Now I got a new calling, which is really cool because I missed having one.
So can you walk me through your decision? Because you were my doctor. You had a medical practice.
Right.
And you made a change.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that change?
Yeah. So
I don't want to get too personal, but
No, I came out of training and I joined that group. It was a really nice group that takes care of suburban people, and we had the mayor and all sorts of people in that practice, and a good group of doctors. And anywhere you practice medicine has been a great thing for me. It's a service-oriented thing. Every day you get to go and listen to other people and their issues, and kind of not think about yourself. And I missed my patients in that practice. I mean, there were really nice people there that I got to know and love and appreciate. And but it was also a private practice where you have to run the business as well. So you're constantly thinking about how the money's going to work, and it's not a bad experience. But at one point, I heard that they were having a teaching program down at Shasta Community Health Center, which is our community clinic, and so they were going to have doctors in training so I could teach. And so I talked to them, and they said, "Yeah, we'll save a spot for you if you want to come." So I went home, and within 2 days, I told all my partners I'm out of here, and I had to give them 6 months' notice. That was a long time to sit here and be a lame duck, but yeah, it was. I think I'd been there long enough, and it was just nice to have a change of pace. And I would say that the patients I have now, that frequently I'm the only one in their corner. I'm the only support. And one of the best things we've done lately is we there's some new medications out to treat heroin addiction, and we got 200 people in our program right now that 85% of them are off of heroin and loving it, getting their life back. Addicts hate themselves. They hate every minute of it. And they're just using so they don't get sick. They're trying to function. They're not really trying to get high anymore. And I had one gal, she cried, and she told me, she says, "You'll never understand how important it is for me to come here once a week and to talk to your receptionist, who's a normal person, to your nurse, who's a normal person, to you, who's a normal person, sort of, and to, just to normal people and connect with normal people." She said, "It's so important and reinforcing for me because all the rest of my life does not do that." And another one said, "This weekend I'm going to my daughter's 11th birthday party for the first time in 8 years sober."
Wow.
She was so excited to be able to go and be respectable.
That's awesome.
And the people, same with the homeless people, when you reach out to them and they know you're caring, people with addiction, when they know you're caring, there's tears, and they just, it's God bless you, thank you for caring, and it's really, really touching and amazing. So
see, Tyler, that when I hear those words, I think of your words at the beginning of the show. In response to President Nelson and leading out, you spoke of the importance of love and loving one another, and what it does when you can just throw your arm around somebody, right? And you don't need the sermon, you don't need the scripture, you don't need the TED talk, right? You just are there, listening, humanizing things, normalizing things, understanding that this mortal life is hard and there are sinister traps that people fall in, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that people are good, right? And that even in their struggles, they're good, and they want to do good. Doug, what would you say to someone who says, I want to help, I want to make a difference? What would you say to that person to get them started on a path of being a member of the community that's contributing, or we could call it discipleship, right? We could define that many different ways, but what would your advice be to that person?
One thing is they may already know and just haven't acted on it. But the other thing would be to kind of do a little evaluation. Take a piece of paper and write down, what are your strengths? What are things that you can offer? What are things that you can do? What are you good at? What are you not good at? then I would look around in the community, and like there's a homeless coalition meeting once a month at the county. Every group involved with homelessness goes there, and they all sit around and talk about stuff. And there's things like that in the community where you can find a way that you can contribute and be involved. And then I would be prayerful and see where you're led. But it's most powerful if it brings you in touch with people. It's most powerful if you just sweep trails and clean canoes. I mean, that's great, but if you're in touch with people along the way somehow, and you have connectivity, and especially if what you do can give somebody hope and the feeling of love that Mike was just talking about, and that comes back 1,000-fold to us.
I love that idea of that it's most powerful when it leads you to people, right? When you're interacting with people. And the interesting thing about that is it's powerful because we have the opportunity to interact with someone and maybe have change occur there, but the change is occurring here, right? I mean, I think that for me, I always find that, right? I get involved in a cause. I throw myself into it thinking I'm going to do some good. And then I walk away going, man, I feel different. Like I want to be better. I want to make changes. I want to adjust.
And And I think the word grace is partially understood by much of the world.
Yeah.
And it certainly is what a lot of people think it is. It is undeserved blessings and his strength. But when you act in this way to really bless somebody, to really help somebody, even especially if it's in some sort of sacrifice on your part, what you're describing is grace that comes to you, that's more than you deserve. That's a frosting on the cake that you didn't ask for.
Yeah.
Well, and you can see God's hand in your life.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the places where you've had tender mercies and you've been delivered from your own self.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Doug, we've talked a lot about climbing, right? Just trying to get better. From your vantage point, you're a hiker, right? From your vantage point on the trail, looking back to that 20-year-old in Germany, are you living the life that you thought you would be living as a 20-year-old missionary in Germany?
I'd say yes and no.
Okay.
I'd say yes. I'm generally on the sort of worldly path I thought I would probably pursue, but I did not see the going like this, just where you're led to go, like to go help homeless people. I didn't have a clue of that. Did not have a clue. That is absolutely not anywhere in the grid until it came along, and then it was like, boom. Wow.
So what would you tell that 20-year-old kid? What advice would you give him?
Press forward with steadfastness, right? With hope and faith and charity, and be a leaf in the stream. Be willing to go where you're taken. Don't be so rigid. Don't be so rigid in planning everything out, every little dotted I and every crossed T. You can't go where it comes and make that decision when it comes. Because when it comes and you have the opportunity to go do this thing or to do that thing that you feel good about with the Spirit, you be a leaf in the stream that way. It doesn't imply a lack of organization, but it implies a partnership and a trust and a willingness to answer calls. And I think if I had done that better along the way earlier on, I think I'd been happier.
Well, that's my next question, right? Did you ever fight that? Did you ever have moments in your life kind of like Jonah and Nineveh, right?
Like, man, for the next year, right? It's all set.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to happen just like you have it written down, right?
I have had us signed up for at least 10 different senior missions in the last 2 years. Absolutely. And then I tell my wife, right? What? And so I'm learning and it's all good. And but I think you can't plan out every single thing. You need to plan what you need to plan to do your part and things to try to get your feet enough squared away that you can be a blessing to other people. And but then man, don't focus on position, don't focus on your bank account. Just picture if the law of consecration comes next week, how are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
Have you just looking back on your life, and this isn't a question we've asked before, but I think it'd be appropriate. Have you ever had the right person at the right time give you that little nudge or give you that counsel that that helped you? Could you share an experience that comes to mind?
All 100 of them. Like I think if you're paying attention, this happens to everybody, and I don't think that this is a singular thing for me at all. I remember a heart surgeon I talked to when I was in high school. He was President Nelson's partner, actually. And he was at a wedding reception. And I said, I think I'm interested in medical school. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, just find something you like. Because if you like it, you'll be good at it. And then he turned away and started eating his brownie again. I distinctly remember that. That was a big event.
It's funny that you mentioned pay attention. I was listening to something today, and the speaker quoted Diane Reeves is a jazz singer, and she has a song called "Testify," and there's a line in the song that says, "Be still, stand in love, pay attention." And I just thought, that's some great advice, right?
Yeah.
Be still, stand in love, pay attention. I don't think we're very good at paying attention.
We get busy.
Yeah.
We get busy. But you will get prompts. You'll get prompts from your family. That's the whole point, is to brush off our sharp edges. Trying to think of other things. Had a great mission president, Enzio Busha, who was later 70, and he has some just super good. He has a book called "Yearning for the Living God," and it's kind of his life about finding this God long before he found the church. And he talks about being just absolutely honest with yourself, following the uncomfortable promptings of the Spirit, shunning fear, shunning anger like a plague. He says, shun fear like you would the plague. Wow, that's interesting. Fear and things that are not, that the Spirit can't be there. But
I like that, the uncomfortable promptings of the Spirit, right? I think that's I think a lot of times when we talk about that in the church, I think there's this idea that it's just going to be this Leahona, if you will. It'll just point us in the right direction and off we go. And I think I like the idea that the uncomfortable promptings of the Spirit, because the growth comes there, right?
Yeah,
that's what the growth is.
I'm trying to figure out, is there another kind? Right? Because it's that call to hire.
Well, I think, right? I think that if we're listening, right, and we take that prompting for what it is, it's asking us to change and to grow, right? Regardless of what that prompt is, whether it serves someone, whether it's to be more invested in our own study, in our own communication with our Heavenly Father. All of that is a call to action. And takes us off the couch, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, can I share an uncomfortable prompting I recently had? So a couple of episodes ago, Tyler and I discussed forgiveness and the power that forgiveness as a principle of faith can unlock in our lives. And in that moment, as we were talking, actually, I was taking notes, and I had a short list of people that came to my mind, right? And we all can do this. There's just something, there's a disturbance, something went down, there was an exchange, there was something, and there was an offense, and it's unresolved. As as it so happened, I had an opportunity to have a conversation with a person on my list. And I could have easily ignored and just had the conversation I needed to have. But because I got Tyler in my head and some commitments made through this little podcast project, I stopped and I just said, "Hey, sister, can we talk?" There was a thing that happened. I was hasty. It was a task that needed to be done. And I mishandled that situation. I felt that disturbance between us, and I don't want any ill feelings, right? And will you forgive me? And we had a little moment, and she faithfully said she forgave me the minute that it happened. And we moved on, right? And we went on. But it was an uncomfortable prompting. Take care of this. Hey, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
Right.
And in that moment, right? And I think a way will be prepared. If you're prayerful about it, watch out. Like your wife praying about service.
If you
Watch
really,
out.
if you really want it, but you have to be really honest about it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Tyler Gould, for being a good friend and for pushing me, right? And challenging me and having conversations and trying to hold me accountable to be higher, right?
Whatever I can do to make your life more uncomfortable, I'm all in, man. So Doug, what gives you hope these days?
Oh, wow. Yeah. You know, I think it's super easy right now to get sucked into the media, the politics, the social media, the polarization,
the fear,
the there's a lot of things that drive this for us right now, but it's at our fingertips, and we're seeing it all the time. Yeah. It's in our head, it's in our car, it's in our house. We used to have to go read the paper to have that happen, but now it's like boom. And so that's that scripture, where he says, in the world you will not have peace, but in me you shall have peace. And I thought, well, man, we'll just get this election done and everything will quiet down, right? I don't think so. Yeah. I think it's just a prelude. And but in the midst of that, and that was the message of many of the messages in conference was, we don't have to get sucked up in that. We participate in productive ways. We be positive. We show love. We be involved in meaningful ways. And we were reading the other day, like 3rd Nephi, I think it's chapter 10, is right before, or maybe 7 or so, but right before everything comes down and starts happening. In Nephi, their country's in shambles. They're living in tribes. Everything's a mess, absolutely horrible. And it said that he was still praying, and there were a lot of people who joined themselves to the Church of God in the midst of that crazy time. And so what gives me hope is that that if I have one hand in the Savior's and he knows what's happening, he's got it, and it's all going to be good.
For he's overcome the world, right?
Overcome the world.
Not as the world giveth, give I, but I've overcome that, and we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine. He actually works at the rescue mission, but he posted this little thing. It says, if you look outside of you, you'll get confused. If you look inside of yourself, you'll get depressed. But if you look to Christ, you'll be at peace. And I think really that's why he's there, and he's given us other tools to use to try to do that. And that gives me hope that even when hard things happen or bad things happen, even in our families, and they will, that he will lead us through that and past that and beyond that. And our kids might all have their own plans of salvation, right? They might be more circuitous than we had hoped, but nonetheless, if we're faithful, there was a great scripture in Jeremiah we talked about in Sunday school. It was, I will honor you for your work, and your children will return from the land of the enemy. And it's like, whoa, okay, that gives me some hope.
Yeah, I love that. I think right now it's easy to be, to sort of be lost in the darkness. It's just like you said. There's just so much noise that distracts us from the things that will ultimately give us hope. And the irony there maybe is that we find the hope in those quiet moments, right? If we can tune out the noise, if we can mute some of that, if we can find a way to separate for a second, we can find those moments of peace.
Yeah, that's good.
You talked a little bit about meeting Sherry. What does Sherry McMullin mean to you?
I think if you marry pretty well, and I don't know that you have just one person that you're supposed to find, but if you marry pretty well, they help your weak things become stronger and better. And frankly, when I was young, and even now, I just take myself too seriously. And she's a very loving influence, but very leavening too. And we always just had fun together. And we laugh, and I need to laugh. It's the thing I need to do. So in many ways, I mean, she's really been a balancing influence in my life. And fortunately that you can share the deepest, most important things in your life with. I think that'd be hard if you could not. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and we're getting to a different stage of life now, which is kind of crazy.
Any advice? We're a couple steps behind you. Any advice?
Enjoy it if you get up in the morning and you don't hurt.
That's good advice.
Too late.
Exactly.
If you can reach down and tie your shoes and it doesn't hurt.
You doing all right?
Relish.
Doug, do you think about your parents and how do you honor them today?
They're still around. Yeah, they died 23 years ago, within 2 months of each other. They were both living here with us, and my mom, she was tough. She always had a lot of issues, a lot of health problems, and she always just kept going and said, "Okay, fine," and she'd keep going to church, keep doing things, even though she had all these things come up. And so, we really admire her for her tenacity. She really underestimated her testimony. She really underestimated her own capacity in that regard, because she was really an example of a fantastic testimony. She died with her tithing in her hand, and just was really a fantastic example in that way. My dad was always just the solid guy, super honest. He's the one who would go back and find somebody and square things up if things weren't done well and done honestly. I feel like that you get, when you have people in your family die and go to the other side, it's an opportunity for you to be closer to the Spirit than you've had before. And part of that's the grief and the hardness when that happens. But if you're attentive from time to time when you don't expect it, you'll have little experiences with that. And they're still around. They kind of visit once in a while. My dad has given me advice on finances, absolutely. My mom has warned me, reprimanded me, and been giving me some compliments, without a doubt. And they're over there. They're worried about their grandkids, their great grandkids. They're thinking about it. But I found a file my dad had left this week, actually. Interesting, you should ask. And when I was forever, when my dad went to church, he would take a blank piece of paper and a felt tip. Okay. So I found 400 of these things.
Wow.
In a file.
Wow.
This is from some sacrament meeting.
How
right?
cool is that?
And he said, I was taking notes.
Oh man, I love it.
He would call him. Cool. It was a big joke that he always was drawing these. He would call him a doodle. So anyway, that was kind of a cool experience to see all those and just think about him this week, and put him in a Shutterfly book and send copies to my brothers. And they don't know what's coming yet, but
that's beautiful.
They're going to get 100 doodles for 100 days.
That's amazing. I love it. Doug, what do you hope your children learn from your life?
Well, they need to give goats a break. That goats are not the bad guys.
You are a huge goat fan. You want to explain? You like them in a burrito, or you like them spread?
No, that's kind of joking. I actually hope, for a long time, that was my hobby, was these pack goats, and we would go out on hikes with the goats, and that was a big joke, is that I cared more about the goats than the kids.
It's funny that you mentioned goats, because as I mentioned, Doug was our family doctor, and my daughter was born at 11 pounds 2 ounces. So we went from a normal delivery to an emergency C-section. And this is my first kid, right? I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm in this operating room, and Doug's talking about goats. And I'm thinking, I love Doug McMullin. I love Dr. McMullin, but my life is on this table. I really need him to focus on what he's doing.
I don't remember that, Mike.
Oh, I do. I'll never forget that, right?
Interesting.
But that was just so great. I mean, you were so confident, and that was just, you guys were small talking over my wife's, cut open abdomen.
Cut open stomach, yeah. To answer your question, though, I hope that my kids just don't think of goats. I hope that something seems inspiring to them, something helps them be stronger and stay there where they need to be, and raise their kids well. And every generation should get a little bit better.
Yeah.
And if you're following your natural man, you're only going to do what you saw done, and that's not good enough.
What does better look like for you?
Get better, you mean?
Yeah, what does that get better for you? What does that look like for you today?
I hope that my kids are more patient than me. I'm actually a little impatient. I hope that they can be more expressive of affection than I am outwardly sometimes. I hope that they will look for good things that we all have too, and be kind in their memories. I think also you want to live your last day first, right? So if you want to zoom it ahead, roll it ahead a little bit to when you're 82, if you're lucky, or whatever it is, and you're on your deathbed, and you got hours to live, and your family's kind of gathered around, or they're not gathered around, or what will you want then? What will you want to have happen? What will you be happy about? What will you be, will you say, well, I'm glad, I wish I would have worked more, or stuff like that. Or I wish I would have had more goats or something, or nah, it's probably not going to happen,
Right.
But I think that kind of situation brings you down to what's most important. And I've talked to some hospice nurses, and they might be a good person for your show.
Yeah.
There's one who's a really sweet Catholic gal, and she's a hospice nurse, and she goes, I said, it must be interesting when people get down to dying, what they do, right? And she goes, her eyes got really big, and she said, it's amazing.
Wow.
She said, people, their family come from the other side. They're talking to them. They have these amazing experiences of like peace and light. She said, it's such a privilege to be there, unless they were a bad person. And if they were a bad person, she said, it's really ugly. I thought, wow, that's interesting, coming from her who's never read the 76th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, and she's talking about, rewards and kingdoms of glory, and
yeah.
But anyway.
Well, and that's beginning with the end in mind, right?
Right.
Live your last day first. I love that.
Well, Doug, when Mike and I, we put this podcast together, and it was all about, it's titled The Richest Man in Town, and it's really all about finding people that we admire and respect, and we consider to be in that category. And we both, we've been talking about having Doug McMullin on this show since we started it. We just wanted to pace ourselves a little bit, make sure that we weren't going to totally embarrass ourselves when we had you on. But
okay, you can say it. You didn't have anybody to do it this week.
All right, so it was an empty slot tonight. I'm sorry, but but we, I am grateful for you and for your example, for the limited time that I've been able to be around you, and I know Mike thinks highly of you as well. But what does it mean to you, Doug, to be the richest man in town?
It means that when you're alone and everything is quiet and the noise is gone, that you have peace. That the things that matter the most to you are headed the right way, if not perfected yet, if not lined up perfectly, but the things that are important, and they're reflected by how you use your time. They're reflected by what you set your priorities in the day, that you're not totally driven by the need to work, even though it is time consuming and is a necessity. But I think you need enough in terms of worldly things to prevent significant want. Most people do, but you just got to have the right things in your heart, the right things put first, and we've talked about those tonight.
Yeah.
Doug, I've talked on this show before about lower lights. Brightly beams our Father's mercy, and lower lights on the shore guide us home. You are a lower light to so many people. That as we look to people in our lives, Tyler's a lower light for me, Doug McMullin's a lower light for me. As we have these people in our lives, they show us what Christ-like attributes look like in action, in the flesh, and they help us. And I just say, friend to friend, thank you so much for letting that light shine, right? Because we can't fall asleep, right? There are people trying to get home, and they're looking to guys like you and me and Tyler and so many others that we know. And we've got to do what we can to lead out and to let that light shine so that they'll know the way, right? And we know the way. Jesus Christ is the way. And I know that through studying him and through watching you. So we appreciate your time tonight. We appreciate the lessons. So many things to take away. And I just thank you for being who you are.
Those are nice comments, Mike. I appreciate it. There are a lot of lights around.
Just got to pay attention, right?
That's right. We appreciate the comments, the lessons, and the discussion of goats. Really, Doug. That's really what we appreciate it.
They're not bad.
They're not bad. Well, Doug, thank you so much, and it's been a blast, and we've enjoyed every minute of it. So,
right.
We appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for the invite.
All right. Have a good night.
Yep. See ya.
To my big brother George, the richest man in town.